Snow White bombs, breaks records for the lowest live-action remake opening ever. Let me say that again. Ever.
Disney poured more than $200 million into the live-action Snow White remake, expecting a guaranteed smash that would lure both nostalgic fans and a new generation of moviegoers. The formula seemed foolproof. Take a beloved classic, modernize it just enough, and watch the box office receipts roll in. After all, previous live-action reimaginings like The Lion King, 2019, Beauty and the Beast, 2017, and Aladdin, 2019, had each pulled in hundreds of millions, if not billions, worldwide. But somewhere along the line, this particular retelling hit a massive roadblock. Early buzz hinted that the creative team was straying far from the 1937 masterpiece, which pioneered feature-length animation and essentially built Walt Disney's empire. Then, the biggest red flag unfurled. Rachel Zegler, the actress playing Snow White, made comments that alienated the very fan base she needed on her side. Instead of building excitement, her interviews triggered a wave of criticism that spread like wildfire online. Suddenly, ticket pre-sales were so weak that finding a good seat, normally a challenge for a major Disney release, became laughably easy. As more details emerged, the entire project started looking less like a magical reboot and more like a cautionary tale about how to sabotage your own blockbuster. People have questioned whether Disney's constant rehashing of old classics has finally gone too far, and whether the actress at the center of it all might have dug herself into a PR hole she can't climb out of. Right now, the question is, did Disney's attempt at modernizing a timeless fairy tale backfire so spectacularly that it might alter the studio's strategy going forward? We're about to break down the behind-the-scenes drama, the controversies swirling around Rachel Zegler, and the reasons why Snow White 2.0 might mark a turning point in the House of Mouse's reign. At first glance, the plan for a live-action Snow White seemed almost too big to fail. This is the film that essentially launched Disney's legacy in 1937, becoming the foundation of what would evolve into a global entertainment juggernaut. Fans expected gorgeous visuals, enchanting music, and that intangible Disney magic that has captivated audiences for decades. Executives, meanwhile, likely envisioned a sure bet, yet another nostalgic property that they could update and monetize. But well before opening night, it became obvious something was off. Rumors circulated about script issues and changes so drastic that even casual fans were taken aback. Images leaked online suggesting the dwarves had been replaced by a collective of magical creatures, sparking confusion and anger among those who felt the dwarves were a crucial part of the Snow White identity. Then there were whispers about last-minute re-edits, uncertain release dates, and a general sense that Disney might be second-guessing its own creative choices. The real clincher, however, was the lackluster response to ticket pre-sales. Unlike smash hits such as Avengers, Endgame, or Disney's earlier live-action remakes, which often saw ticketing websites crash from the surge in demand, this film's advanced sales were notably subdued. Industry insiders began quietly forecasting a disappointing debut weekend, but nobody anticipated just how quickly that forecast would spiral into the realm of catastrophic. The studio's usual hype machine, characterized by splashy premieres, star-studded red carpets, and a barrage of TV spots, felt muted. By the time the film actually reached theaters, the narrative wasn't about can Snow White break records, but rather, how badly is it going to fail? Rachel Zegler's career seemed to be on an upward trajectory after her breakout performance in West Side Story. She had the vocal range, a promising screen presence, and Hollywood insiders saw her as the next big thing. Yet the moment she began discussing her role as Snow White, fans of the classic fairy tale started raising eyebrows. Zegler made it clear she viewed the original 1937 story as outdated, pointing specifically to the princess's passive demeanor and her reliance on a prince for salvation. She hinted that her version would be more independent, determined, and focused on personal growth and romance. While this updated angle might resonate with certain audiences, it simultaneously ruffled the feathers of Disney purists. The 1937 Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs isn't just another cartoon. It's a piece of cinematic history that paved the way for countless animated features worldwide. Many fans felt Zegler's comments trivialized the film's significance, as if the original were nothing more than a relic that needed dismantling. Instead of a respectful modernization, it sounded, to some, like a wholesale rejection of the source material. Then came interviews in which Zegler seemed to speak about the film with what critics labeled an almost dismissive tone. Headlines screamed that she found the story weak, and implied that her Snow White would be the only meaningful take on the character. Social media exploded with accusations that she was biting the hand that fed her, namely, the Disney tradition that made Snow White a household name. Instead of bridging generations by showing respect for the original while adding fresh layers, she came off to many as insulting the fairy tale that started it all. In today's digital landscape, every statement made by a high-profile figure can go viral within minutes, and that's exactly what happened to Rachel Zegler's remarks about Snow White. The initial wave of fan discontent morphed into a broader, more personal attack, with social media users labeling her ungrateful, entitled, and even out of touch. The turning point for many was her mention of 16-hour days in the iconic Snow White dress. It was a complaint that, from the outside, seemed petty to people who saw it as part and parcel of blockbuster filmmaking. After all, wearing elaborate costumes for long hours has been a Hollywood norm for decades. Even more contentious was her stance on fair compensation for streaming. She reportedly insisted that actors should get paid every time someone streams the film on Disney+, a stance that, while bold, collided with traditional Hollywood norms. Some saw her perspective as the forward-thinking opinion of a new generation trying to reshape unfair compensation practices. Others dismissed it as naive or outlandish, arguing that paying per stream would be financially impossible for studios. These comments only intensified the negative chatter, fueling a narrative that Zegler was either clueless about industry realities or willfully ignoring them. Within weeks, the rumor mill churned out tales of her being removed or quietly dropped from various upcoming projects. While no studio went on record to confirm these moves, online gossip suggested she was originally tapped for roles in Toy Story 5 under a cryptic code name, a Pirates of the Caribbean reboot, and even a Blumhouse horror trilogy. Each time her name vanished from public mention, fans took it as further proof that Hollywood power players were distancing themselves to avoid dragging her baggage onto their sets. Bob Iger's return to Disney was supposed to be a triumphant homecoming, a chance to steer the studio back towards solid creative and financial ground. However, he found himself juggling a host of issues: the streaming arm burning through money, controversies about overly politicized content in recent releases, and fan fatigue from a constant barrage of remakes. Snow White was meant to be a shining jewel in Disney's live-action crown, revitalizing a legacy property and cashing in on cross-generational appeal. Instead, it became a lightning rod for criticism. The marketing campaign was a glaring indicator of the trouble brewing within. Usually, Disney whips up a sense of grand excitement around its tentpole releases. Think elaborate teasers, a sentimental nod to original songs, or behind-the-scenes footage that showcases the new film's dazzling set pieces. But in this case, the promotional materials landed with a thud. Some trailers tried to play up comedic angles, presumably to appeal to kids, while others seemed to lean into a more dramatic retelling. That inconsistency created confusion about the film's tone, leaving both families and adult Disney fans unsure of what they'd be getting if they bought a ticket. Worse still, the magical creatures replacing the dwarves did not resonate with audiences. At best, people were puzzled. At worst, they felt Disney was needlessly meddling with beloved lore. Social media lit up with memes comparing the new band of characters to a random group from a fantasy knockoff rather than the iconic dwarves everyone knows by name. Meanwhile, Iger faced mounting pressure to address the studio's reliance on reboots and questionable creative decisions. In many eyes, Snow White wasn't just an underwhelming film. It was a metaphor for the studio's apparent identity crisis. Attempting to modernize a nearly century-old tale is no small feat, and Disney's track record with live-action remakes has run the gamut from triumphant Cinderella, Beauty and the Beast, to forgettable Dumbo, Mulan. But Snow White seemed destined for trouble the moment radical alterations were made to what many consider the cornerstone of Disney's entire brand. Swapping the dwarves, who each have distinct personalities central to the story, for a medley of vaguely defined magical creatures felt like an attempt to solve a problem most fans didn't believe existed. Traditional viewers missed the comedic banter and unique charm the dwarves bring, while new audiences weren't given a compelling replacement. Then came the decision to push the prince to the sidelines, which is part of a broader trend where Disney tries to emphasize a heroine's independence. While the idea sounds progressive, the execution felt jarring. Critics argued that the film shoehorned in girl power messaging without actually building a deeper, more complex narrative around Snow White herself. Instead of seeing a balanced evolution of the old tale, viewers got heavy-handed moralizing that overshadowed the lighter, whimsical elements Disney is known for. Visually, too, the movie reportedly suffered from inconsistent direction and uneven CGI. Reviews mentioned how some scenes tried to replicate the 1937 aesthetic shot for shot, while others ventured into a gritty, modern vibe that clashed with the fairy tale ambience. The end result, according to many, was a messy hybrid that satisfied neither nostalgic fans nor newcomers hoping for an innovative experience. From a storytelling standpoint, it was neither fish nor fowl, caught between reverence for the original and a desire to break completely free of it. Throughout the mounting controversy, Rachel Zegler remained defiant and outspoken. She repeatedly framed her version of Snow White as a much-needed overhaul of a stale princess narrative. She praised Disney for taking bold risks, even as fans and critics panned nearly every revealed detail. When some corners of the internet accused her of disrespecting Disney's history, she doubled down, asserting that the new movie was made for a generation that demands more agency from female leads. Yet her comments often had the opposite effect of what she might have intended. Instead of convincing skeptics, they reinforced the belief that she was looking down on the classic film, and by extension, its fans. Sentiments like the 1937 story is outdated were perceived not as constructive critique, but as borderline condemnation of a childhood staple for millions of people. This, in turn, fueled more YouTube commentary, podcast discussions, and Twitter threads dissecting every syllable she uttered. People who had initially been on the fence now found themselves more firmly in the anti-Snow White camp, simply because Zegler's defense felt combative. On top of that, her unwavering stance seemed to leave no room for acknowledging the magic and charm of the original. If there was any nod to the brilliance of Walt Disney's pioneering work, it got lost in her declarations of how her Snow White was a complete overhaul that fans simply had to accept. All of this left Disney stuck in a tough position. They needed their star to promote the film, but her promotional efforts were lighting up social media for all the wrong reasons. Snow White is not just another title in Disney's sprawling catalog. It is the film that put the studio on the map in 1937. Its success paved the way for everything from Cinderella to Frozen, defining what a Disney fairy tale should look and feel like. So when a remake of that cornerstone property bombs this dramatically, it goes beyond typical box office tallies. It signals to the public that maybe, just maybe, Disney has lost touch with what its audience actually craves. That has big implications for the studio's broader strategy. Disney has relied heavily on live-action remakes to keep profits flowing, often banked by brand recognition rather than genuinely novel storytelling. Yet the backlash here suggests there's a tipping point. Fans are increasingly vocal about wanting respect for the source material, not corporate-driven modernization for modernization's sake. Plus, a star publicly criticizing aspects of the original, and by extension, its fan base, can create a rift that's nearly impossible to mend. For Rachel Zegler, the immediate future might hinge on how she addresses the criticism and whether she can pivot her messaging. Hollywood, for all its faults, does love a good comeback. If she finds a project that aligns with her views and resonates with the public, she could bounce back. But if the controversies compound, she might end up another cautionary tale of what could have been. In the end, this Snow White debacle goes beyond one actress or one film. It's a snapshot of an entertainment world in flux, where streaming has reshaped how we pay actors and watch movies, where social media can catapult a controversy into the mainstream in mere hours, and where even a giant like Disney can stumble if it underestimates the power of legacy and the expectations of a loyal audience. Now, the question is, does Disney learn from this and recalibrate, or does it barrel ahead with more risky remakes, hoping audiences will eventually come around? We'll be watching every step of the way.